Elena Marsh had never wanted to be anyone's queen. She grew up far from the Packlands, in a small town where she made her own choices and answered to no one. She liked her life simple. She worked at a bookstore, took long walks in the evening, and never imagined that her world would collide with the hidden kingdom of the Silver Moon Pack. It happened on a cool autumn night, during a charity gathering that brought together people from many different circles. Elena had come with her best friend, Lyra, who had distant ties to the Pack community through her family. Neither of them expected the king to be there. Damian Cross was not like the men Elena had read about in stories. He did not need to raise his voice to command a room. People moved aside when he walked, not out of fear, but out of instinct, the way animals sense strength before they understand it. He was the Alpha King of the Silver Moon Pack, a leader chosen by blood and by power, and he had ruled for 3 years since his father passed the crown to him. When his eyes found Elena across the room, something shifted inside him that he could not explain. It was not simply attraction, it was recognition. Some deep, old part of him knew her, the way the moon knows the tide. He crossed the room and introduced himself simply as Damian. Elena did not know who he was at first. She only knew that his voice was calm and steady, and his eyes held a quiet intensity that made her feel seen in a way she was not used to. They talked for almost an hour that night. Damian asked about her life, her work, the books she loved. He did not talk about himself, his title, or his kingdom. For the first time in years, he simply wanted to be a man, talking to a woman he found remarkable. It was Lyra who later pulled Elena aside and told her the truth. "That man is the Alpha King," she whispered. Elena laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but the look on Lyra's face told her it was not. In the weeks that followed, Damian found reasons to see Elena again. He visited the bookstore where she worked. He asked her to dinner. He was patient, respectful, and never pushed her for more than she was willing to give. Elena found herself drawn to him, despite every instinct that told her to be careful. Then came the night everything changed. Damian invited her to a quiet dinner at his estate, and there, beneath the soft light of the moon, he told her the truth about what she was to him. She was his fated mate, the one soul bound to his through a connection older than the kingdom itself. He explained the bond gently, carefully, watching her reaction with real concern. Elena did not run. She was frightened, yes, but she was also drawn to him, in a way she could not deny. She agreed to learn more about his world, to see if there was a place for her in it. That decision led her into the heart of the Silver Moon Kingdom, a hidden world tucked within an ancient forest, protected by generations of tradition and secrecy. The kingdom was beautiful in ways she never imagined, with grand stone halls and gardens that bloomed even in the coldest months. But beneath the beauty, Elena soon discovered a world built on rigid rules. The Council of Elders, a group of stern advisors who had served the crown for decades, made it clear from the beginning that Elena's role would be defined for her. She was expected to learn the ways of the Pack, to accept guidance on how a future queen should speak, dress, and behave. She was told when to appear at court, what causes she was permitted to support, and even how much time she was allowed to spend outside the palace walls. At first, Elena tried to adapt. She told herself that every relationship required compromise, and that she loved Damian enough to make room for his world. Damian, for his part, tried to shield her from the harshest parts of Pack tradition. He argued with the council on her behalf more than once, insisting that Elena be given more freedom than past queens had received. But the deeper Elena went into palace life, the more she realized that no amount of goodwill from Damian could change the foundation the kingdom was built on. She was constantly watched. Guards trailed her on her walks, not for protection alone, but to ensure she followed the rules of conduct expected of a future Luna. Her opinions in council meetings were smiled at politely, then quietly dismissed. She began to feel like a decoration rather than a partner, a symbol of the crown rather than a woman with her own voice. The turning point came during a formal ceremony meant to introduce Elena to the wider Pack as Damian's intended mate. She had prepared a short speech, hoping to share her own thoughts about unity between the Pack and the outside world. Before she could speak, one of the elders stepped forward and announced instead that the future queen wished to express her gratitude and devotion to the king. offering words that were not her own. Elena stood frozen on the stage, smiling, because she did not know what else to do, while a stranger spoke for her in front of hundreds of pack members. That night, she cried for the first time since arriving at the kingdom, not from sadness alone, but from the realization that she was disappearing, piece by piece, into a role that was never meant for her. Damien found her later in the garden, sitting quietly beneath the same trees where he had first told her about their bond. He could see immediately that something was wrong. When she told him what happened, his anger was immediate and real. He promised to speak with the council, to make sure it never happened again. But Elena shook her head. "It's not just tonight," she said softly. "It's everything. Every day, someone else decides who I am supposed to be. I love you, Damien. I do. But I am losing myself here, and I don't know how much longer I can hold on to who I am if I stay." Damien wanted to argue, to promise that things would be different, that he could fix it all with enough time and enough pressure on the council. But looking into her eyes, he saw the truth. This was not something that could be solved with promises alone. The kingdom itself needed to change, and that change could not happen overnight. Elena made her decision that same week. She told Damien she needed to leave, not because she stopped loving him, but because she needed to remember who she was outside of his crown. She was not rejecting him as a man. She was rejecting a system that asked her to disappear. Her departure shocked the entire pack. No one had ever heard of a chosen mate walking away from the Alpha King, especially not a mate who still clearly loved him. The council saw it as scandal and weakness. Damien saw it as something else entirely. He saw a woman brave enough to choose herself, even when it meant losing the person she loved. In the months that followed, Damien could have replaced Elena, could have moved on to another match approved by the council, as many expected him to. Instead, he began to ask questions he had never asked before. He questioned why the kingdom demanded silence from its queens. He questioned why love within his world always seemed to come with a price of surrendered identity. He looked at generations of tradition and saw, perhaps for the first time, how much of it was built not on wisdom, but on control. He started making changes, slowly at first, testing the boundaries of his own power. He limited the council's ability to speak on behalf of the royal family without consent. He ended the practice of assigning constant guards to monitor a mate's personal movements. He worked to change the laws that stripped chosen mates of independent decision-making once they entered palace life. The council resisted at every turn. Some called his changes reckless. Others whispered that he had lost his focus since Elena left. But Damien pressed forward, driven not by anger, but by a new understanding of what leadership should mean. A king who ruled through control was no different from a captor. A king who ruled through respect might actually deserve his crown. Months passed. Elena returned to her quiet life, working at the bookstore, spending evenings with Lyra, slowly rebuilding the sense of self she had nearly lost. She missed Damien more than she expected to. There were nights she wondered if she had made the wrong choice, if love was supposed to require this kind of sacrifice. But she also remembered the version of herself that had been fading in that palace, and she knew, deep down, that she could not have stayed and remained whole. Then, one evening, Lyra called her with news that left her speechless. Damien Cross had stepped down as Alpha King. He had handed the crown to his younger sibling, who had long shown interest in leadership and had supported many of the reforms Damien started. Damien himself asked to be released from the throne, choosing instead to live as an ordinary man within the pack, free from the weight of a crown that had once demanded so much from the people he loved. Elena did not know what to think when she heard the news. Was it real? Or was it another attempt to win her back through grand gestures? She decided she needed to see for herself. She found him weeks later, not in a palace, but in a small home at the edge of the Packlands, living simply among the people he once ruled from a distance. He looked different somehow, lighter, though the intensity in his eyes when he saw her had not faded at all. They sat together outside his home as the sun began to set, and Damien told her everything. He told her how her leaving had forced him to see his kingdom clearly for the first time. He told her that he did not give up his crown to win her back, though he hoped, quietly, that it might happen. He gave it up because he could no longer justify ruling in a way that turned the people he loved into symbols instead of individuals. "I am not the same man who first asked you to stay in that palace," he said. "I am not asking you to return to a crown or a title. I am asking if there is room for an ordinary man in your life, one who finally understands what it means to love someone as an equal." Elena listened, and for the first time since she had left the kingdom, she felt something settle inside her. Not certainty exactly, but hope. She saw in him a transformation that felt real, not performed for her benefit, but built from genuine reflection and change. She reached for his hand and told him she was willing to try again, not as a queen bound by duty, but as a woman choosing him freely, the same way she had once walked away freely. In the seasons that followed, Elena and Damien built a life together, outside the walls of any palace. There were no crowns, no councils, and no rules dictating how she should speak or who she should become. There was only the quiet, steady partnership of two people who had learned, in the hardest way possible, that real love does not ask anyone to disappear. Their story became a quiet legend among the pack, whispered, not as a tale of a king reclaiming his queen, but as the story of a man who learned that true strength was not found in holding on tightly, but in letting go completely, so that love could return to him freely, on its own terms, exactly as it was always meant to.